Welcome everybody. My name is Mike Byrne. I've got a new job, I have to remember. I'm a global channel director for Netex. We're situated just there, so if you want to come and talk to us afterwards, please do come and ask questions. This is my colleague Rosh, sales director, and he'll be joining in the presentation towards the end. What we're going to talk to you about today is learner engagement platforms and how to embrace the evolving nature of learning. And it was really reassuring for Rosh and I when we started to look at the agenda for the show, because typically this time of year you start to see a lot of the vendors talking about their top trends for 2018. Years gone by, it could be virtual reality, could be gamification, could be social learning. But I think the exciting thing for Rosh and I and for Netex and for the rest of the vendors is that we're starting to see a little bit of a consistency in the message that the technology vendors are talking about, and talking about how we're trying to, I'm trying to sort this out, embrace the evolving nature of digital learning and look at better ways of delivering digital learning to our customers, our learners within our organizations. And that's what we're going to look at today. And I'm going to be very British, and I'm going to start by giving you some good news, but then I'm going to give you some bad news as well. So the good news is, assuming that we'll work within learning technologies, which I think is a fairly safe bet, we globally work in an industry that's worth 140 billion US dollars and is growing year on year. If you add academia, it's probably worth about $300 million now. The other good news is, according to a recent Byrne by Deloitte study, that learning and employee development now ranks #2 in the minds of CEOs and leaders of business. So the industry's growing, we've got more visibility within our organizations, which is fantastic. The bad news is, for the majority of you, not all of you, but for the majority of you, your current digital learning ecosystem probably isn't going to help you deliver against this new mandate that you're getting from your CEOs. And this is what really Rosh and I want to talk about today. And it's going to come in 3 parts. We're going to look at the changing times that we as human beings are living in. We're going to start to look at how this is affecting our learner needs. And then Rosh is going to take over, and we're going to look at Netex's response to this and the different platform solutions that we're starting to deliver. Now, this is another really interesting slide, and once again, it's from Deloitte. I've got some references from other analysts later on in the presentation. But it's looking at the digital transformation that organizations and we as individuals are going through at the moment, and the effect that this is having on the productivity gap with organizations and the challenge that this is causing HR. Now, if you look at the rate of change for technology, I think Moore's law, which some of you may have heard of, states that computing power is doubling every 18 to 24 months. So technology is moving ahead like this, like a rocket. If you look at the rate of change for the technology we're using in our day-to-day lives, we're not quite there, but we're more adept to change and we're more open to change. You think about the apps that you're using on your mobile phones. We think about my experience at home. We got one of these Alexas at Christmas, and my kids, who were 3 and 5, realized that when we weren't in the room, they could add chocolate to the shopping list. So we as individuals are pretty quick at picking up the change. But if you look at business, the story isn't so great. And this is a real challenge for HR at the moment. How we can address this productivity gap, and make sure that we're trying to close and increase the rate of digital transformation. And what digital transformation means? It means that we're using technology to work more effectively internally, but also to service our customers more effectively as well. So, quick question. We probably all had lunch. I want to make sure you're all listening. What is the average length of time you think you can focus on a task in the workplace without being distracted? Who thinks it's 15 minutes? Nobody. Who thinks it's 5 minutes? 10%. Who thinks it's 1 minute? There you go. And I might be being a little bit controversial here, but some studies show, there are other studies, some studies show that the average attention span of a human being now at work is 8 seconds, whereas the average goldfish, is, if there is such a thing, is 9 seconds, which is a pretty worrying thought. But when you start to think about the amount of external variables that your average goldfish is exposed to, then maybe that makes more sense. Because some studies in the US have shown that we can pick these things up to 180 times a day in the workplace. And that's really what I want to go in and focus now, is how mobile, really, we don't just view it now as a technology, but we view it as a lifestyle choice. And this is fundamentally changing the way we work and also the way we interact with other human beings. So the real opportunity for learning and development isn't necessarily HTML5 responsive courses. We've been there, we've done that. We've had that for the last 5 years. But the ability to access content as and when we need it. If you think about what you do with your mobile phones, you share, you communicate, you navigate, you purchase. Our ability to draw content whenever we need it, wherever we need it. And this is what the real opportunity we think lies in for L&D. Now, this is an interesting study. It's called Think with Google, and some of you may come across this before. It's focused on us as consumers, but I think there's a lot of correlation that we can make with our lives in the workspace as well. And Think with Google showed that we as human beings no longer live in years or hours or weeks or days. I always have to get that in the right order going down. But we live in the moment. We choose to consume content as and when we need it. And we as human beings have gone from periods of periods where we can focus on a single piece of information for an elongated period of time, to hyper-attention, where we're focused on multiple sources of information instantaneously. And this is what we need to think about when we're looking at learning design and also learning delivery. Now, this then raises the argument whether we're looking at learning or performance support. Because if you think now, I don't know, before mobile phones, 10 years ago, I think on average, if in the audience, we may have known 10 telephone numbers, off the top of the hat. Now, you probably know 2 or 3. But you have the ability to recall those telephone numbers as and when you need it. And that's really what we're looking at within learning platform design. Just, 1 second, I'll just get some water. And if we look then at how we try and profile the modern learner, and once again, this source by Josh Byrne, I'll just pick out a couple of these. We're showing that on average, we have around 20 minutes per working week to dedicate to training, which is about 1% of our working time. We only watch video for 4 minutes. 30% of us are working outside our contracted hours. So we're being asked to do more with less, we're time stressed. But for many of us, our traditional approach with learning will still be to deliver e-learning courses that might be 8 hours long, or to send our people out onto a classroom course for 5 days. And what we're saying now is that necessarily isn't always the most relevant way that we can deliver digital learning now. So I want you to consider something else. And this is a scenario that affects people up and down the land in offices everywhere. You're in the middle of creating estimates for a project and you need to add a data sheet. It's been 3 months since you did your training and you can't remember how to do it. Who is going to use the LMS to figure out how to do this? Nobody. Who's going to ask a colleague? I know I'd ask my CFO, Alex, who's sitting there. If you need to know about Excel, ask him after the show. Who's going to use Google? Exactly. Drawing information as and when we need it. And who's going to read the training manual? So this is it. So what I'm trying to tee up here is that we are moving to a point where traditional learning methods, whether they're online or face-to-face, aren't always the most relevant now, given the state that we're living in as human beings. However, There is a caveat. I mean, I work in digital. I evangelize the use of digital learning every day of my working life. But I think we do have to recognize that there are dangers with digital as well. And I was reading a study from a sports psychologist, and he was talking about the Internet of Things and how we as humans are moving from a period where our interaction was human to human to an interaction where our interaction is mainly human to machine. And there are issues with that. I've got a young family. I see how addicted my son can be to the iPad. And me and my wife, for our New Year's resolution, many of us will have failed our resolutions already, we decided to put our phones in the drawer when we got home from work. And the results have been revolutionary. We sit on the sofa and we talk to each other in the evening, which instead of watching a TV while WhatsApping. So I think we also need to recognise that digital isn't the be-all and end-all, and we need to be wary of where we're going, but there are definite benefits associated with digital learning delivery. So what we want to go on now is, and we're going to do a session tomorrow, I should have said my Ricardo, looking at new content approaches in this new digital transformation we're working through, but we want to focus now on what that means in terms of platform delivery. And if you look at your average LMS, if there is such a thing as an average LMS, and we start to look at the relevance of the LMS, bearing in mind what I've just said, well, in many times, content becomes obsolete quite quickly because they're training plans and development pathways that are prescribed to you maybe months or weeks in advance by a training administrator. And it's not giving me the skills or the information that I need to know now. And more often than not, the content is pushed towards us. There are great LMSs out in the marketplace, and I'm probably being a little bit dramatic here, but content is pushed. It's not giving me the ability to pull the content easily as and when I need it. And this is really, and I've got our friends Logic Earth here, who are our partners from Ireland. They created this slide, and I reuse it, but I do reference them. This is a great slide because they've tried to chart the development of learning systems or learning platforms. And when I talk to people that I've just met, as you do at a dinner party, normally the questions you ask each other is, so what do you do? And when I say e-learning, I normally get two responses. The first response is, what's e-learning? Which is a little bit of a worry. I think we all exist in the bubble and we think everybody knows about it, but they don't. The second response is, oh, e-learning. And they associate it with a compliance course. They go into the LMS once a year. When they get in the content, they click next, they click next, they click next, until they get 80% and they can forget about it. And this is what Logic Earth were talking about here, where the bar was set very low, the user experience was pretty awful, and people didn't feel motivated to go into the platform. In the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the bar raised higher, and you'll have seen this in learning technologies. We've started to see new elements around the user interface, the user experience. We've started to see social. We've started to see gamification. But at the heart of it, it was still an LMS, even if we had some bells and whistles wrapped around it. Where we're moving into now, the here and now, and where it becomes really exciting is when we see the new breed of learning platforms moving into the marketplace. When we're looking at APIs, we're looking at open architecture, we're looking at interoperability, we're looking at drawing content from different sources, and we're looking at machine-led learning to recommend content to us based on where we are now, but where we aspire to go in the future. And I think that's where it becomes really exciting. And you'll hear lots of vendors talk about the Netflix type approach. Loads of us have got it on our marketing material. I'm sure Netflix are going to start asking questions about it soon. But we're talking about creating personalized learning environments. We're talking about understanding the learner, and as well as giving them the capability to draw down content when they need it, with this new breed of platform, we're talking about how we can deliver content to them when we think they might need it as well, or where we think they may need to go in the future. I think this is the last one from me, and this is a slide from Josh Burson again, that was released last March, and it's showing you how the market is starting to shake out. And if it's anything like the conversations we're having at the stand, or we're having with our customers at the moment, we see can be a lot of dissatisfaction, around existing learning management systems. We talk about learner engagement. We talk about learner experience and how we get the ability to bring content in from different places. We're talking about micro-learning. And Netex, really, when we talk about this, we talk about this consumerization of learning. So we're talking about how we can deliver digital learning within our organizations in a format that's more appealing, but in a relevance and a place when our learners need it. And that's what Rosh is going to go on and talk to us now. We'll talk about how we're delivering this in the real world.
Afternoon, everyone. So I'm just here to take you through the last few sections of our presentation. And first of all, I guess I want to sort of start with where we are going as an organization and also where we see the market going in 2018. And you all as learning professionals will know and hear words bounded around the industry like AI, Mike just mentioned a second ago, machine learning, VR, AI, as I said again a second ago. These are all areas which are going to slowly raise the bar, as the image that Mike showed a moment ago. Netex as an organization are embracing those types of technologies to create a more engaging and more user-centric ecosystem. So when we're talking about serving up material or content to our learners, we're talking about, as Mike mentioned earlier, the suggestive capabilities. So we can drill down on a learner and say, he or she might arrive into the organization with a particular job function or job role, and they might need, when they come into the business, a certain sequence or range of courses that will help them to be more effective, rather than the traditional way that content was accessed. That might have been through a list, through an LMS. And me, as an individual, I just disconnect straight away, because then I don't feel like I'm getting a personal approach. I don't feel like the content may be served up in a way that helps me and engages my frontal cortex and helps me to think about how I might translate that into my working life. So there's suggestive materials that will do that. And machine learning is going to grow and become better and better, but it's all about the tagging and the background and the data that supports that information when it arrives into the system. AI is going to become even more important, and as those tweaks become more and more relevant, and organizations and technology can help to fine-tune and learn, that's going to become increasingly more important to organizations. We all use a type of that already, and Mike asked the question, who uses Google? And I think probably 90% of people put their hand up. You're using it already. Maybe some people in the room may or may not know that. So what else is coming down the track? Within what we're doing within Netex and the way we are supporting content, we've also got built-in video assessment capabilities. So being able to record and assess learners using video technology, it's not revolutionary, perhaps, but arriving that capability in an ecosystem, in a solution that enables you to create multiple touch points, certainly from a user point of view, adds a real relevancy and an engagement level that didn't exist in some of the flatter systems, let's say, so a traditional LMS. So the market is changing, and absolutely we as an organization are embracing that. So there's plenty more things that are moving the organization and Netex and technologies in the long run. But we're one of those organizations that look at technologies at the forefront and try to embrace what we feel is going to support our learners, and ultimately giving them material at the point of need, but ultimately giving real learning outcomes in the right manner. So I want to take you through a few slides to show you what we're doing at the moment and how we're supporting our customers. So we work with I'd probably say it's one of the largest manufacturing companies in the world. And they came to Netex with a particular challenge in that they've been working tirelessly over the years in supporting training in lots of different formal ways. And actually what they found was they were engaging with content which is too flat, not in the right mode for the learner, so they weren't engaging with it in I guess in a cognitive way, and also really the content was too long. So Netex have engaged this organization and supported the creation of what we call learning sprints. And we've supported the organization in creating these distinct activities comprised of material that may sit in their organization already, but also enable them to curate material from resources that may not be inside their ecosystem and arrive that into one central touch point. We call them learning sprints, and they're designed to be, let's say, between 2 and 5 minutes long. And you can create game-based methodology to unlock levels, give points, create leaderboards to incentivize and motivate learners to come back in to the system over and over and over again. It's probably a bad analogy, and I might get told off for saying this, but I'll say it. It's kind of, for me, the best way I can describe it is like Candy Crush, and I'm going to admit I probably play a little bit of Candy Crush. And you're unlocking levels, you're unlocking the next piece of content. And because we're suggesting material to our learners, because we know that they've accessed a certain piece of information, then we can then give them the next piece of material or learning that is required based on certain touch points they've had in the system. So just to give you an idea of what these game mechanics look like on surface, and as you look at the screen left to right, you can see your progress mechanic, your points mechanic, your position mechanic, and your days left. So these are the mechanics that we use as part of the game-based methodology and the game-based engine. So it's not real-life gaming, but it certainly helps to motivate and engage the learner in a far more compelling way than a standard 8-hour e-learning course, for example. And as we work through, as an individual, these short sprints, just an example of what an activity could look like. We've embedded a video that we've created for this particular customer in particular, and they were promoting a drive, an engagement drive for learners to take ownership of their learning. So we created a sprint around why is it important to be certified within the organization, and these are the resources that you need to be certified. So we created a video, and as part of that we embedded it into the sequence. So this is just one resource, but resources could be another XAPI course, could be a web link. We could even stop these videos 25 seconds as in here and ask a question to the learner and actually pull out analytics onto, you know, which of our learners or which of our key learners have skipped to the end of the video and which of our learners have actually interacted with the object and answered the questions, and then reward them for doing so as well. And then lastly, just a screenshot of another activity. This is not an external activity, but it's actually a map of the organization's, oh no, I'll show you the next actually. It's a map showing the different routes, the certification routes, and it's an interactive map. So within the learning play environment, within our platform, you can actually interact with it. So we've taken those screenshots to show what that could look like. So that's again utilizing material that doesn't sit within our platform, but you've curated it into a sprint, made it relevant, created a campaign or an engagement piece for that, and then pushed it out to the population at the point of need, and then being able to assess them as part of the capability. So, finally, a bit of a tagline for Netex, but we certainly think that learning isn't learning when it doesn't look like that, and we certainly feel that our platform capabilities, and specifically learning play, doesn't look like a learning platform, and that's why we believe we get great greater engagement, utilization, and real-life learning outcomes through our customers and their initiatives, because when they're coming into our platform, it doesn't look like a standard access point for resources. It's very similar in some ways to your mobile phone. And we know, like Mike said earlier, potentially some people pick their phone up 120 times in a day. I probably pick my phone up more than that, I'd say. But yes, I think that kind of gets to the point, the last slide, and I'd love to thank you for your time. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask. Our stand is just over to the right-hand side, so please do come and see us, and if there's anything we could help you with and talk to you about today's presentation, we'd love to do so.
Thank you.